What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the DC Sports Huddle. It is sponsored by MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fan's paradise. I am Rob Woodfork, patiently waiting to see Aaron Rodgers move to C if the Jets get desperate enough to give me a tryout at quarterback, alongside George Wallace, the Tom Izzo of the show, and Dave Preston, as much a friend to tri-corner hats as he is enemy to styrofoam cups this time of year, because of his mutilation in the name of bracketology. Now, we are going to start with the NCAA tournament brackets, and if you're anything like me, you already have your sheets of integrity filled out.
Did you rehearse that whole thing?
Did I rehearse it?
The hatred of the brackets and the styrofoam?
No, I gave it some thought. I do some prep for this show, contrary to popular belief.
Okay.
So we are starting with the NCAA tournaments. The men's field, guys, I kind of feel like this is the most wide open tournament that we've had in a while. There's not that big baddie that everybody just assumes is going to go all the way to the final. It's not like Duke in the 90s or what have you. Obviously Houston is the number one overall seed. They've put together a pretty strong regular season, but I think you could make the case that they could flame out in the Sweet 16 just as much as you could make the case that they win the whole thing. So we start with Dave Preston, who is an AP Top 25 voter. He has seen all of these teams intimately, and his sheet of integrity is probably as good as anyone's. So what are your initial thoughts on the way the brackets shook out, both locally and globally?
Well, we'll start locally, and what a difference a year makes, guys. Last year we were clinging to, I think, Delaware on one side and Richmond on another, and saying those are our locals. We've got some great local stories this year, and we start inside the district with Howard Bison in their first NCAA tournament since 1992, and what a great job Kenny Blakeney has done there this season. What an incredible run they had in the MEAC tournament, a fantastic finish to beat Norfolk State. And just like 1992 when they played Kansas in the first round and Kansas was the number one seed, that's the case this year. And they're in a Midwestern city that begins with D, except instead of Dayton way back when, it's Des Moines this year. But just to get to the NCAA tournament is an achievement in and of itself for the one bid league schools. And congratulations to them. They're going to have a tough task because Kansas has been one of those top teams in the country all season. You could have easily made them the number one overall seed at any point in the last month, and nobody would have argued with you. The other great story inside the Beltway, the University of Maryland, first year with Coach Kevin Willard. They're back in the big dance after the mess that was last season. Mark Turgeon leaving in December, Danny Manning, inheriting a complete mess and doing the best he could to put together a solid team and a solid season. They play West Virginia, which is going to be an interesting matchup because Bob Huggins, has been around for ages. And when you play West Virginia, you feel as though you've played West Virginia for not just 2-3 days, but maybe a week. So that'll be a challenge for them. Another local school of note, Virginia, didn't exactly have the best finish. They kind of slumped in the ACC championship game against Duke. They're a number 4 seed, I believe. And then VCU wins the Atlantic 10. They're a number 12 seed. They take on St. Mary's in Albany. So there's the old case of a team traveling from the West Coast to play at 2, I believe, which is before noon. So we've got that going for us. That's my local take, and you guys can chime in and before we move to the national idea.
No, actually, and I actually picked VCU as my 5-12 upset in part because of that, but also because they've just been a strong basketball program for a good long while. So I thought they were a little low as a 12, but I feel like that's a good upset pick there. I think it's fascinating that Maryland and Virginia land in the same bracket, and Alabama, with everything that's going on with the off-field issues that school is enduring right now, it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility that you see a Maryland Virginia matchup in what round would that the Elite Eight or Sweet 16, I think,
round of 16,
yes.
The
Sweet 16. So
in Louisville.
Yeah, so that would be interesting if we get that, for lack of a better term, a civil war, at least in terms of the locals.
Before we move to George, you mentioned how their seed was a little bit lower. I think the reason why their seed is low is the Atlantic 10 didn't go out and get any of those huge high profile wins in November and December. And when you don't do that, it's the metrics. It's this, thing, and it decreases. It's why the Mountain West got 4 schools, because for whatever reason, they had more high quality wins in November and December that bumped their number up a little bit more.
What are you seeing in the brackets, George?
Nothing.
Beautiful.
Back to
I should have said you were the Marshawn Lynch of the show.
Yeah.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Just here so you don't get fined.
If Maryland's going to play a 1 seed in the second round, of the 1 seeds, I would like to take my chance at Alabama because of everything that you mentioned, Rob. I know they're the number 1 overall seed, but just with everything going on, I'd take my chance at that with a team that you really haven't seen. Purdue won. Okay, you've seen them before. Kansas, I think, with Bill Self coming back now, is going to catch fire. And Houston, I think, is the best team right now. Anyway, as far as the ones are concerned, so I would take my chance with Alabama. You got to get by West Virginia first. And last time Maryland was in the tournament, or one of the time they played West Virginia, Melo Trimble goes down with concussion. Very physical game. They end up losing it. But I would love a shot at a number 1 seed in Alabama. Virginia is going to have its hands full with Furman. And then, that second round, you have Charleston, who has the most wins this year, playing a San Diego State team. You don't really see much of San Diego State. They won an ugly title game the other day. So that could be an interesting situation. The Howard thing is just a great story. You're going to go up against Kansas, probably get blown out. But just the fact that they are there, they're just riding that high right now as far as that's concerned. As far as the number 1s, I think Purdue's got the toughest road ahead. You got Marquette as the 2 out there. You still got, I had it pulled up here. Who was the 3 out there with them? It was
in which seed?
Kansas State, Kansas State, and then Michigan State still there. Very familiar with them. Tennessee, Duke could be an interesting 4 or 5 matchup. So to your point, initially, I think this is the least controversial bracket because none of the, nobody from those single team conferences, no real upsets, no bubble teams getting wins and, upsetting anything. So you kind of get that. And it also is, I think, like you said, too, the most wide open tournament. There is no one dominant team. I think if you look at that top 5 this year, you have teams that could beat anybody on a given night. And we saw that. And who else people aren't really talking about so far is Gonzaga. They got that, that matchup could be there again in the, was it the Final Four?
I got Gonzaga in the Final Four.
Drew Timmy wants to win a championship before he turns 40.
But no, I mean, to your point, I mean, look,
UCLA's the 2. UCLA's the 2. Kansas, that's right. Yeah.
Right. So I think coaching is going to be at a premium here. And that's why, that's why I think West Virginia is a scary matchup for Maryland off the bat, because you do have Bob Huggins, as we mentioned, but also the reason why I called you Tom Izzo, I got Michigan State going all the way to the Elite 8 because I love Tom Izzo. I love what he's done with that program. And, I don't care what their regular season record was. I mean, those teams are a tough out come tournament time. So I got them going all the way to the Elite 8, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least if they took it even further.
Love Izzo and Marks. I know people make a big deal about that all the time, but it's so true. He's got Michigan, he's got USC. But look, Marquette, don't be. But Marquette, though, Marquette ran through the Big East. Shaka's doing a heck of a job there. That's the 2. Yeah. In that. That'd be the 2-7 second round matchup. And then Kentucky, Providence, Kansas State, Montana. I'm going to see those guys in Greensboro. Love me some Coach Cal. So that'll be fun.
Shout out Montana State. My brother's alma mater. So
cool.
I actually got them pulling the upset in the first round. I got them winning a game.
Is your brother going to, is he going to be out there? Is he going to be in Greensboro?
He's not going to be in Montana State. He lives in Washington State now, but
well, they're playing in Greensboro.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to make the trip for that.
Okay.
Chiming in.
I'll say hello.
Chiming in nationally, gentlemen, I think you guys are spot on. When you look at the top 10, 15 schools, everybody has given us enough reason not to buy them in March. Even Houston, Houston has been near perfect this season, but Marcus Sasser was unavailable this past Sunday in the AAC championship game. They don't need him to beat Northern Kentucky. They might need him to beat Auburn or Iowa in the second round. So you look at, and you mentioned Michigan State. I think if Michigan State were to go winless, they'd still find a way to get a number 7 seed in the tournament, and they'd still find a way to win a game or two passed around where they should. I'm wary about Marquette, guys, from the standpoint they won a lot of close games down the stretch, and it's almost though they're playing on borrowed time. They remind me of when Georgetown, the last really great team with JT3 back in 2008, Roy Hibbert was on that team. He had a 3 to beat UConn at the buzzer, and they won a lot of ridiculous games, and it almost felt as though the Hoyas that year spent all of their mojo capital, and they got to the tournament and they lost to Steph Curry and Davidson in the second round. So I think I even though I'm very impressed with Shaka Smart, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a run to the round of 16, I think their luck runs out against Michigan State. I think they've spent way too much mojo capital the last couple of weeks.
And they get don't look past the Catamounts in round 1 either.
No, I know. No, you had a chance to see them in Burlington last weekend. I think looking if we can check out the different regions, I'm not sold on Purdue. I'm if there's a team that concerns me and scares me, it's Duke, and you guys know why, because they're playing better than anybody else in the country right now. 9 straight wins. They ran through the ACC like a blowtorch through butter. Everybody's healthy. When their nucleus is healthy, they're 17-1 this season. And I'm not sold on Purdue. Their guards aren't good enough, too inexperienced. And even though they've got the best player in the country in Zach Edey, for some reason, Purdue in the tournament last year against St. Mary's, they should have walked into the Final Four. They did not. They always seem to be, the whole is less than the sum of its parts. I've got Duke advancing. I've got Alabama advancing. I've got UConn advancing from the West bracket, beating Gonzaga in the championship game. I think Danny Hurley is doing a fantastic job, and I see they're playing very well on both ends of the floor in a way very few teams are at this time. And then I've got Houston advancing to the Final Four. Originally, I had Texas, but I've got Houston, and there's one reason why. Jim Nance. Houston alone, doing the Final Four for the final time this year before he goes off and just does golf and annoys us there. And then, and football. Went to the University of Houston. For him to call a Houston national championship in his final call would be so Jim Nance-ish, it wouldn't even be funny.
I thought you were going to say you like Duke because Dick Vitale and Jay Billis like Duke too. That's the way it kind
of.
No,
I don't. I hate.
That's a Ben Raby pick right there.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a Ben Raby pick.
But I've actually spent the night in Durham, unlike Ben.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so my Final Four. You're telling me I'm an idiot for picking Purdue to go to the Final Four, which I did. I picked them to beat Duke. And
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I got Arizona also advancing, Gonzaga, and Houston is the top overall seed. Again, and I said it before, I could see them flaming out in the Sweet 16. Right. I could also see them winning the title. So I just threw a dart against the board and said I got them winning the title over Arizona in the final. But let's turn it local before George Wallace stepped away to do a sportscast here. We'll get his Final Four in a moment. But Maryland, how far do we think Maryland can go in this thing? Because, they're given a coin flip chance by ESPN to even beat their first round opponent, West Virginia. Right. So, I mean, even if you do get past them, going up against Alabama, that's a 1 seed. That's a team that's been strong much of the year. As we mentioned, there's some off the court stuff that could either derail them or galvanize them. And it's hard to tell kind of which way that's going to go. So how do we think Maryland, assuming they beat West Virginia, because it would be boring to say that they're going to go one and done, but can they beat a top seed in Alabama and advance beyond that?
I don't think they have the shooting to do so. I think they've got Jameer Young, and he's the most consistent player they have. Outside of him, Juju Reese is great in the low post, but as far as a guy who can create his own shot, it's been when Jameer Young plays well and shoots well, they do well. When he doesn't, there's a lot of issues. They lean on, Dante Scott to shoot really, to play really well against, Minnesota. Against an Alabama, you have to play your best game. And I don't think that Maryland's best is good enough to beat Alabama. And I also think the after effect of playing West Virginia for 40 minutes, that's gonna hang on you for a couple of days. No matter, you could play Sunday and you'd still, feel the after effects from the Thursday game. So, but I think it's been this team has so exceeded expectations, Rob. It's ridiculous. I thought that, okay, if they do well, they'll go 7-13. They might break the 500 mark. They might get into the NIT, but to get into the tournament, and not just in the tournament, but solidly where they're an 8 seed, they weren't even close to being in the bubble. They played their way into it in such a good manner. And I think the future's bright for Coach Kevin Willard. I think that unlike Mark Turgeon, he gets Maryland and they kind of get him. And I think, again, this is only 1 year. For all we know, things go up in flames, because that's how things happen in this world. That's why they're called surprises. But I
played
think,
out at American with,
yeah.
But
I mean, the stock, I would buy stock in Maryland and Kevin Willard right now, because they're going to be very good, not just in the in the near future, but long range as well.
No, I like that team a lot. The thing that has been frustrating this season is that they play like world beaters when they're at home and not so much. There's such a huge dichotomy between the Terps at home and when they're away. And I know that they fared a little better in neutral site locations, but still, I mean, if you can't pack your best game and take it on the road, you don't really have a shot at doing anything substantial. So,
and the whole Big Ten was like that too. I think the only schools that had winning records, I think Purdue was the only team with a winning record on the road in the Big Ten, and they want to win in the league. I think Northwestern may have gone 6-4.
There was only 2 schools that had a non-losing record in conference play on the road in the Big Ten. So yes, it was not unique to Maryland, but Maryland was kind of on the back end of those teams that had the losing records. There's a difference between 4-6 losing record and what was theirs, 2-8,
1-9 with the win over Minnesota. So do you really count that? I mean, you do. Virginia, I think we've talked a little bit about the Cavaliers. I think they run into a buzzsaw, whether it's San Diego State or the College of Charleston. They don't have the offensive giddy up this year. And defensively, they're not as great as they have been when they've been outstanding. And you look at their shooting, it just, they can, I could easily see them score in the 40s or, get into a track meet with the College of Charleston and come up woefully short.
George, what was your Final Four selection?
And the way they looked in that championship game against Duke.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah.
I haven't done an official Final Four yet.
No sheet of integrity?
No, but if you need me to do it now,
I mean,
Houston, I definitely have in the Final Four.
Okay.
All right.
So we're just going to down to what I said because it's probably wrong.
Huh?
I said Houston, Gonzaga, Purdue, Arizona.
Okay. I've got Gonzaga.
Dave said I'm an idiot for picking Purdue. Because he said, and I'm quoting, their guards are trash.
Okay.
I'm gonna say their guards are young, and even though they've seen a lot of minutes this year, I don't feel confident in their guards against Duke when they play well defensively, and that's what they've done for the last month.
I agree. The West is I'm stuck between Gonzaga and UConn because UConn's playing. UCLA, I don't think they're going to do much. They've got the injury concern.
Right.
Now
I did a long pause on Gonzaga and UConn.
Because, the East is still up for grabs for me. I don't know yet. I don't think it's going to be Purdue. And I don't know. I can see
your
Marquette.
Maryland's eyes won't let you pick Duke.
Right. I like Michigan State all the time. Anyway, I always pick them in March, as we've talked about with Izzo. Yeah. But I like Marquette, so that's kind of where I'm stuck at too. So I don't know.
Okay. All right. That's fair. How far do you think Maryland goes?
George? That's a great question you asked. I'm glad you asked me that question.
Yeah.
You're sounding like a coach now, George.
Yeah.
I think I I want to see them up against Alabama. I don't think they could beat Alabama, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. How about that? The way
Last time they were in the tournament, they played Alabama a couple of years ago.
And last time they were in the Sweet 16 was Louisville as well when we lost to Kansas.
Right.
They're probably going to bow in the second round. I do think they can get by West Virginia. I think that they've played this year. They played well. I thought they played well against Indiana the other night in the Big Ten tournament. A couple these stretches late in that game, but I think they played well. I mean, the 15-0 run will do it to you every time. And that missed goaltending call was big in that game. But anyway, I do think I want to see them get a shot at Alabama. They probably lose that game, but I wouldn't be, I could see them winning it too, but they probably lose in the second round.
And we've talked, gentlemen, about how how it's wide open. You look at an Indiana team that played really well in the second half against Maryland, and then the next day they lose to a 10th place team on a neutral floor in Penn State. For as good as Indiana has been this year, they got boat raced by Iowa. They got swept by Northwestern. And that's in a nutshell what this year is, guys, where the difference between, whereas with the women's game, you have your elite, and you know what? Iowa's not losing to a second-tier Big Ten school. Maryland's not losing to somebody who's not in the top 20 at this point in time in the season. I think in the men's game, the top 5 teams, any of the top 5 teams can lose to teams 31 through 35, depending on the circumstance and situation.
Exactly. And that's actually a good segue to the women's bracket. We do want to touch on that because Maryland is a prominent entrant in that tournament. And unfortunately, they fall in the same side of the bracket, the same region as South Carolina. So I'm assuming that Maryland is going to get to the Elite Eight where they would face South Carolina, but I have South Carolina winning the championship. So I have them going out, the Terps that is, in the Elite Eight, South Carolina over Virginia Tech in the national championship game. How do you feel about that?
You got Tech getting it done. Yeah. Mad props to the Hokies getting to, they won their first ever ACC championship this year and getting their first ever #1 seed. You hate to say under the radar, but not being North Carolina or Duke in the ACC, or even Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish have been a Final Four regular over the years. They really kind of snuck up on a lot of teams this year. They've got the woman Elizabeth Kitley, who's been absolutely fantastic. I'm surprised that Ashley Owusu, the Maryland transfer, has not been a factor on the roster this year. I thought when they added her, I thought that she'd provide a nice shot in the arm. She's not been the player that I thought she was going to be for them. I think Maryland, can easily, because they don't have size this year, they've been Brenda Frese has done one of her best jobs as head coach, putting together this team of scrappy players who, they maximize every possession on both ends of the floor. And I think that this is a team that could easily lose in the second round, or a team that could easily get to, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost this upcoming Sunday in the second round to Arizona or West Virginia, or if they reached the regional final and played valiantly and came up short against a much, because they'd be undermanned against a South Carolina. So it's going to be, they just got to shoot really well. That's the key to any game, but they really, this more so than other teams where they've had physical forwards who can really, cut, when they're not shooting well, negate that. They don't have that margin for error this year. So, but I think Diamond Miller's been one of my favorite players to cover at Maryland, and Cheyenne Sellers is sneaky good as well. She's the next great, Maryland Terrapin.
Okay. And so real quick, George, how far the women go, the Maryland women?
I saw that South Carolina thing immediately, and that was kind of disappointing. But again, it's in the women's tournament. It's just such
I have all the 1 seeds going to the Final Four, and that's usually how it plays out. As much as there is variation in the men's game, the women's game, it's pretty straightforward based on the seeding.
It's mostly chalk. So but Maryland's just totally overachieved, I think, this year. And I think to Dave's point, the way Brenda has coached this team with losing, they lose 9 9, right?
It felt like 15, but
Yeah.
that's
9.
not the. I mean, they
Yeah,
lost.
9 is a lot by their standards.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and just to lose so many players was just ridiculous.
Yeah. So the fact they did that and were still able to do what they did, I could see them making a run to the Elite Eight and then run into a buzzsaw kind of thing. But I mean, you talk about a successful season. I mean, this for me has been one of the best because we've gone into other seasons with them and they go 6 straight Big Ten tournament championship games, whatever they played in, all of them up to that point. You kind of expected that, but to lose so many players, the 8 or 9 players they did, and to bounce back like they did this year, I mean, that's a huge tribute to her.
And to play off that Georgia caveat, they didn't play for the Big East champion or the Big Ten championship this year, but the Big Ten is as good as it has been since they've joined the league.
Yeah.
Indiana's a number 1 seed. Iowa could very well have been a number 1 seed. Michigan is very good. Ohio State's very good as well. Maryland, when you look at their personnel, could have easily finished 5th or 6th. And the fact that they finished tied for 2nd and lost via tiebreaker to Iowa for that number 2 seed, shows you the kind of season that they were able to grit out.
All right, guys. So just a couple of minutes left, but we have to touch on the Commanders free agency. Taylor Heinicke taking his talents back home to Georgia. He is now an Atlanta Falcon. If you were paying attention, the market value, it's the 2 years, $20 million is about what he was expected to generate. So that's what he gets.
Let's not get carried away. It's a year for 6, really guaranteed.
All right. So if you
why do you gotta go there, man? You're always bringing him down, man. You never liked Taylor here, man.
Here we go. Yeah, because he's overrated. That's why. And so he's going to do in Atlanta what he was tasked to do here, and that was to be a serviceable backup who you break glass in case of emergency. Right. Now the difference is, he's not playing in that Scott Turner offense anymore. And so that's what got him here. That's what made him this, option that made him a fan favorite. Without being in that offense, let's see if he can actually play. But again, I mean, they have Desmond Ridder. He's supposed to be Desmond Ridder's supposed to be the starter. So I don't think anybody's expecting to see Taylor Heinicke on the field, barring injury. But Washington, from the Washington piece of it, it means now you have to get a veteran quarterback who is not Taylor Heinicke. Jacoby Brissett is still out there. That is, I think, the guy that we all sort of honed in on in previous conversations about this topic. But just quickly touching on the guys who they did sign, Andrew Wiley, he's a guy who played in Kansas City everywhere but center. So he's got that versatility that Ron Rivera covets. He is a logical replacement, if not a mirror image of Wes Schweitzer. So that was an interesting signing. Nick Gates, you've been injury riddled on the interior of your line. So you go and get a guy who has been injury riddled. Right. He suffered the injury against Washington, a really bad injury. Look, he was 5th in the comeback player of the year voting. So he wasn't a bad player for the Giants last year, but I think when he's healthy, and that is a caveat, he is a solid interior lineman. Cody Barton, breakout season in Seattle. He's basically a cheaper Cole Holcomb, and you figure so with each of these signings, and those are the big ones as of this recording on Tuesday. Each of these signings, it's like, okay, you addressed the need, but they didn't get the home run hit that you look for in free agency. And maybe to George's point in previous episodes, maybe it's because of the ownership situation. They don't want to spend big money.
Well, and we've also had breaking news within the last half hour. They reportedly, Rivera has fired John Matskow today, the offensive line coach. Kind of interesting timing. March, middle of March. It could be a Bieniemy situation. I don't know. Because
now, if he filled out his sheet for the tournament pool, does he still get to participate?
Great question.
In Ashburn, that'd be really awkward. Yeah, do you got my money?
These are the hard-hitting questions that Dave Preston tends to ask.
So, just interesting timing. Usually doesn't happen really in March. But and you signed 2 offensive linemen yesterday. Bieniemy has a lot of say now in this offensive staff, so maybe that's a situation where he made the change. So I don't know.
Maybe they didn't get along. I'm going to give you 2 names, guys, to look out for coming up in free agency, guys who also have ties to Bieniemy. Blake Bell was in Kansas City with him. Good veteran depth insurance as a blocker at the tight end position. Jerick McKinnon, that is a name that Dave Preston wants no parts of because he could supplant his favorite man in Burgundy and Gold, J.D. McKissick, as the backfield receiving threat.
Then what do we do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We're toast. What I like about the moves, guys, just in a nutshell, is they're not home runs, but at least they're bringing guys in, so I feel that they won't have gaping holes come draft time where they feel they have to reach for somebody that they shouldn't be on their board, where they're going after need, because that's where you make your mistakes in the draft, when you feel like you have to take somebody because you have no linebackers and you got to take somebody from Tennessee, say, or something along those lines, or take an offensive lineman that maybe you didn't want to, but you got to have something to show for it. So at least is the 53 better? Yes, it's not a lot better, but the base of the roster is slow. The floor is higher than it would have been had you not brought these guys in.
Yeah, it feels a lot like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic in some ways. This was a great episode, guys. Very bracket heavy. Hope you enjoyed
Another one?
It is, as always, sponsored by our friends at MGM National Harbor. For the latest in Washington sports, visit MGM National Harbor and experience a sports fan's paradise. I am Rob Woodfork, saluting you all. George Wallace, Dave Preston. We will break the huddle and do it again next week.